we heard some critical voices in regard to accountability in education. Is there a need for accountability in performative teaching and learning?
I would say there's certainly accountability, not only in performative teaching and learning, but in education in general. But the question is how you think about accountability. Is accountability, you have so many tests at the end of the semester, or you, or like, so if you have so many essays at the end of the semester, you have something in writing. But also you can account for learning experiences by project work that involves drama elements. So basically the idea is, yes, accountability, but that doesn't just mean counting things. We have so many things.
Yeah, I mean, why should they always write an essay? Right. So essay is a standard form of writing in seminars or at secondary school. So what I, for example, do at university level, I ask the students to keep a learner diary, to record their learning experiences in a seminar. So including how they felt about something that was dealt with in class, even addressing how they arrive in school with which feelings, and then also how they relate to others in the classroom. So it is very personal in many ways, but not only. They obviously also engage with the content, and there is on many levels deep learning going on, and through learner diaries you understand more where they are coming from. You understand the perspectives of the students better than just by looking at an essay where they respond to a specific topic.
And to add to that, I sometimes teach a course on film, and as like just an example, as a final project, I don't do a final paper where they talk about, let's say, film issues like filming techniques, whatever. Such papers don't really interest me. I make them make a film themselves. Only then can they show what they've learned, because if you can put it into practice, and then at the same time, the way they do the film, that shows a bit of them, that comes out. And that is much more interested than any accumulation of facts that they could give me. And I think that's, again, to accountability. If I count facts at the end, facts that are in every dictionary that you could look at, what's another essay on facts going to be? What interests me is, what do you do with the facts?
Manfred, you were arguing that learning should not look to business or to sports, but rather to the arts. Why?
Oh, maybe the answer is simple enough. I mean, if you look at the sports sector, I guess the message we get, it's all about competing, it is about winning, it is about going to mental and physical extremes to then get the trophy or whatever. And we are made to understand by some also policymakers that maybe sports is a model, but I think it's just not enough to think in terms of competition at that level. Also, if we go to the sector of business, okay, business is interested in output and making profit, and the business model is applied very much in education these days across all sectors. It is very questionable if that is a wise move in the area of education. Science has been a model for a long time, especially in teacher education.
What do the arts have to offer as a model?
The arts come from a very different perspective. The arts focus on, I suppose, what you as the person bring to the learning experience in terms of your own creativity. The arts acknowledge this creative aspect of a person. I think to be able to go into it in more detail, we would need to look at the writings, for example, of Elliot Eisner, who is a West scholar who has been emphasizing the role of the arts in education, and he lists a number of reasons for why the arts should be strengthened. So I guess, a simple example is, in education, often you find the tendency to generalize, to come up with general statements. The arts are interested in the particular often, because the assumption is that in the particular, in the example of the one person, or in the example of the small part of something, contained in that is the general. I'm aware that I'm not talking in a very metaphorical way, but I hope it's somewhat understandable.
Susanne, would you like to explain the theory of post-method pedagogy and tell me why it's not a method after all?
Quite simply, it's not a method because it means post-method is a reorientation and a completely different change in discourse to think about it. So in a way, if you are saying, okay, there are these different methods, they're there. It's not, it's no good to pretend that they're not there. You could have the old ones like Suggestopedia, now it's the task-based approach, there's a drama approach, there are all kinds of approaches, but if you almost like post-method it's almost a way to look at it from above, not negating the methods, but to say, well, what do we take at any particular moment for a particular learner group in a particular learning context, so particularity, practicality, possibility. What do we take to afford them significant and lasting learning opportunities? And drama pedagogy approach is one of them, but it's not kind of the method now. There are all kinds of other things that, depending on what you teach, to whom you teach it, when you teach it, in what context you teach it. So in a way, post-method is almost like sort of you raise yourself above the whole method thing and say, yes, they're there, but in the old days it was more like, okay, what method do we teach, according to what method do we teach, and then what do we have to do? But now it would be more like, I want to teach this particular thing to a particular group of learners in a particular socio-political context. I'm a particular person. What do I take because I want to achieve that end? That's a completely different way of looking at it. It doesn't mean like we shouldn't use certain techniques from certain methods anymore, but we're not dictating ourselves, we're not letting ourselves be dictated by a method. It's more like we are using what there is because we can, as teachers, reflective teachers, can decide on their own.
Certainly teachers need a different sort of training to be able to do just that, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's right. So that's why a lot has to change in the area of teacher training. Obviously, the sooner it starts that as teachers work in a more performative way, the better for the climate in the classroom, in the school, and so on. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, that teachers would do a module where they learn how to use their voice. This is not done in teacher education, is not a standard thing to be happening. Why is that? Why not learn from the arts, in this case, from theatre? There are very professional people out there who could advise teachers how to be very economical with their voice, and also could introduce them to very basic patterns of performing in front of an audience. All of those things we need more in education. I guess coming back to the post-method thought, performative understood as a larger concept means a complete rethinking, I guess, of education, and you could apply elements of theater aesthetics. If you look at theater aesthetics, I suppose one factor which we mentioned already is physicality. We need more of that. We have the factor of emergence, meaning teachers are open to what is emerging in a lesson. So it's not all pre-packaged, pre-planned. Something happens in the classroom, there's a student response, and why not build on that and have the competence to improvise and then, teach on the basis of what actually happens in the classroom. Theater means to be present. There has to be a presence. The teacher has to be in the space with full concentration and has to be able to relate to these students and not follow in a slavish way his textbook, etc.
And as a very, very practical example at this point, I did a little bit of improvisational theater. And I always thought that every teacher training course should have an improvisational theater module, not because then you learn how to teach improv theater to your students, but more as a self-improvement, because improv theater teaches you to listen and to take up what the other person's giving you. Instead of just saying, well, I have this idea that I want to portray. No, I always work with somebody, and blocking is not on. So if you say something to me, I have to take it up and work with it. And that is something that a lot of teachers will lack, because they have their idea in their minds, like sort of, we have to cover this and this and this and this, and then they don't listen to students. So this is a very practical example. I mean, my personal conviction that in a way every teacher program would benefit from some improv theater course.
It sounds like not only education would profit from this method that you're suggesting, but life itself.
That's it. I think that's very much the case. So we're talking about the arts in a broad sense. And all the arts obviously are enriching, and especially with regard to giving people an aesthetic experience. And maybe we can finish by referring to Bertolt Brecht, and he says that all the arts ultimately serve one purpose, and that is the art of life.